Well, hello there and welcome to Mind Your Business. I'm Jennifer Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce and also the host of the show. Well, this is a show that we started back in March, and it really was for business and about business in our community. It's something that we wanted to do in the fall, but because of the pandemic, we decided we would move things up because there really are, with the pandemic, there's so much information out there, so much in terms of resources and grants and opportunities for businesses. And we wanted to make sure that the businesses in Georgina tapped into those resources and understood what is out there for them. I'm thrilled to have our guests on the show today. They are all within a certain industry. They're talking about the services, financial and legal services for businesses, for residents in this community. They're all members of the Chamber of Commerce, and we are thrilled to have them here today. I'm going to talk to each one of them individually, but want to introduce them to you now. First, our guest is Margaret Huveranen. She is the financial advisor for Edward Jones. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I look forward to talking to you because, when it comes to finances, a lot of times people don't understand. So it takes talking to a professional, having a professional dissect the information, and we're thrilled to have you here today to be able to do that. Next, we have Lee Canavan. Lee is with Lee Canavan Paralegal Services. Hi, Lee. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Morning, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And finally, we have Joel Lipschitz. Joel is a chartered professional accountant with Lipschitz Professional Corporation. That is a big title, a big mouthful. Thank you, Joel, for being on the show with us today.
Jennifer, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And thrilled to have you. As I said to Margaret, it's, when you're talking about your finances or legalities or dealing with some of these things, often it's stressful for people any time of year. But certainly when you get into a pandemic, when you get into changes and, the anxiety and the emotions increase during this time, it's nice to be able to have professionals in our industry or in our community in this industry who are able to kind of dissect. So let's start with you, Margaret. Tell us a little bit about Edward Jones.
Well, first, I just want to compliment you on the group that you have here because you can.
They're a great group, aren't they?
It's a great group. We don't really get a good sense of our overall financial picture unless we get the tax and the legal component involved as well. So this is going to be really good for giving people a broad overview. Edward Jones, which I'm just happy to work for, I'm proud to work for, is one of the largest financial services firms in North America. We've got over $3 trillion worth of assets under care. And what we do, I guess in a nutshell, is we help people achieve their financial goals, understand and serve them, and develop deep personal relationships with them. And through a holistic approach, including taxation and legality, we help people develop a unique plan for them to achieve their financial goals.
And am I right to say, because I did say that off the top, that a lot of times people get confused when it comes to what they should be doing. So having somebody like yourself work with them really does help them to determine what's best for their situation.
Yeah, people are far more likely to achieve their financial goals if they work with professionals. It's just a proven fact. And particularly now where we have so much going on in the world, people are frightened, and the best place to go for reassurance and for good advice is the people who are professionals at what they do.
Right. So let's talk about current situation, and I want to start with kind of the physical aspect first. The physical aspect of your business is that the doors aren't open currently. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. We're still not allowing people into the branch. That probably will be the case for another month or two. However, we've barely dropped a beat because we are doing Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings, phone meetings. I've done appointments with clients on my back deck. So we're being fairly nimble and moving with the times. And the reaction that we have from our clients has been very, very positive. And fortunately, we have very robust systems that allow us all to work from home. Now,
I would think, too, that moving into this type of structure where you are doing Zoom meetings, you are talking to people over the phone, that it's a system that may work in the future too. You may find that you're able to do that a little more often with clients rather than having that one-on-one, or is there still benefits to having that one-on-one?
I think it's up to the client and what they prefer, and we'll just offer the whole smorgasbord. I'll be happy in a little while to go and see clients back in the office. We'll have appropriate measures in place. But I also have clients who say, you know what, I love this. I don't have to get dressed up and go and so on. So yeah, let's just keep doing what we're doing. So we'll leave it up to them, and whatever works best for them is what we'll do.
Right. I want to mention to everybody at home that we are taping on July 20th. So I know you are all in businesses where you are awaiting information. Every day it changes, the announcements change, the stages change. So as we're talking about one thing now, certainly in the coming weeks and months, that may change as well. So just reminding everybody, because, every day is different. And I'm sure you understand that in your industry. Margaret, let's talk about the market volatility. And I know it's something that we talked about on the phone last week. And, as people try to dissect what they should be doing right now, understanding the market is certainly a big piece of that.
It is. And the market is very volatile right now. And I expect that's going to continue happening over at least through until there's a new president inaugurated in the United States in January, because of fear. And fear is what drives market volatility, fear and uncertainty. And we have that in spades right now, both with a health crisis. There's a social crisis going on, and there's a political crisis going on, as well as just people feeling frightened. And that's driving a lot of the volatility. But what people need to remember is when they're looking at their statements during a volatile time, that's a snapshot in time. They're looking at a piece of paper. And what they need to do is continue to focus on their long-term goals. It's not important what their portfolio value is on any given day. It's important what their portfolio value is on the day that they need that money. And that's what we need to focus on.
So then, understanding that, what do you recommend for folks, whether they're a business owner or just a resident of the community? What do you recommend in terms of their financial goals right now?
Sure. So not to dodge the question, there is no one answer, because it depends upon who the client is.
That's an answer right there.
That's right. So every answer is going to be unique for every client. It's going to depend upon what their needs are, when they need their money, what they need it for, what their willingness to take risk is, what is their ability to take risk. There's a whole bunch of factors that come into play, and it's going to be for every business or for each individual, it's going to be a separate, unique plan and strategy.
Right. But certainly not to panic right now.
Absolutely not. And in many cases, I think Joel could bear this out as well. When the market drops as severely as it did in March, for some investors, that's a huge opportunity. So you can take lemons and make lemonade out of almost anything. So I've been the busiest since March. And mostly the reason I've been so busy is rebalancing people's portfolios to actually take advantage of the market situation. And if you get in touch with me, I'll explain how.
Right. But that's important, that whole rebalance. And that's something that you and I talked about as well.
That's right. That's right. Setting a balance for your portfolio. The whole idea of not having all your eggs in one basket. How much do we put here? How much do we put here? And how much do we put here? And keeping that balance, even though the values may go back and forth, is the key to actually maintaining a portfolio that gives some good returns for you over the long term.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Margaret. That's valuable information. So thank you. I want to bring Lee into the conversation now. A little bit different. We're talking to a paralegal and the information that you can provide to people in our community. First of all, thank you, Lee, for joining us. Tell us what Lee Canavan Paralegal Services is and does.
I advocate in small claims court for small businesses, and I do contract enforcement. between two parties. I also work in traffic court, speeding tickets and such, and then I also work at the Landlord Tenant Board. My market so far has been small business landlords.
You work in all the places that people are terrified to be.
Yes.
Traffic court and in court and dealing with those issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun field.
Yes. Well, it's fun when you're on your side of it, but that's important for anybody who is in need of those services. Again, like talking to Margaret, it's nice to be able to have somebody who is knowledgeable in those areas and who can walk you through those services. What's the difference for anybody who doesn't know? What's the difference between a lawyer and a paralegal?
Lawyers can practice in any field. They focus mostly in they can do all criminal. They can work in family law, wills and estates and such, divorces. Paralegals, we focus more on, our scope is allowed in tribunals, Landlord Tenant Board, impacts, such like that. And we do small claims, which is a division of Superior Court, which is now actually $35,000,
right.
Monetary claim.
Wow.
So, but lawyers can do basically everything.
Right. And are you seeing a difference now? And it's funny, we've almost lost track. When we first started the pandemic, it was, week 5 and week 6. We're now into our 5th month. Are you seeing changes in the legal system since COVID came around?
A lot. Everything's shut down. Every courthouse, tribunal in response to it, except for criminal court was still going, bail hearings and such like that. Everything's slowly opening up. The system was already backlogged before this happened, but the technology is picking up. I understand there was a first criminal case that actually went to trial last week sometime. So it's coming along. Things are still closed at the same time. So
and like with any other industry, do you predict that backlog? It's like with healthcare, or like with anything where things have been put on hold. Are we going to see a larger number of cases and longer days and longer wait times in order to make things happen?
I think so. I think it's also going to expose a bit of people are going to need to hire adjudicators for the Landlord Tenant Board and such like that. So, but yeah, they'll when everything opens up, they'll be working long hours to kind of get rid of this backlog. Indeed.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned again the Landlord Tenant Act. There have been some allowances. The government has stepped in and allowed for some grants and opportunities for tenants, as well as to ask the landlords to alleviate some of the pressure on tenants. Are you dealing with that in terms of your business?
Not myself, but I've heard some feedback from colleagues that are saying that there are a fraction of people that aren't paying, that are refusing to pay their rent. But generally what I'm finding is people, because they're at home, it's not exploded. People are not paying the rent as a result of it, even though you're hearing that on social media. People generally want to stay where they're living.
Right.
So.
And I should mention that when I'm talking about this, I mentioned businesses. You're not dealing with businesses. You're dealing with tenants who are people living in their own homes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to be clear with that.
Or apartment buildings, residential.
Right. Yeah. Residential versus business. Let's talk about the small debt recovery. And I know that's a service that you provide. Are you seeing a lot of changes with people? We just talked about tenants and potentially not being able to pay their rent. What about debt recovery in terms of being able to cover some bills with businesses?
There is a little bit of defaulting on certain contractual obligations that's occurring. Some people, this is exposing how far outside of their means that they're living. And I imagine as everything opens up, these things will be litigated. But generally, the field that I work in is small business contractors and such, and they're working and they're able to, there hasn't been a lot of conflict in that particular area at this time.
Right.
Subject to change.
How has your business been affected over the last 4 months? Because it certainly is, you know, a strange world that we're living in, and it's difficult to navigate.
Everything's been closed. So I have small landlords that are frustrated because their clients, the tenants, weren't paying the rent before COVID, and the eviction process has halted. The sheriff isn't working. So I just visualize a desk with piles of papers, and so they're very frustrated. They're,
right.
You know,
and that becomes the ripple effect to you because you're not able to help, right?
Client management. There's nothing I can do. I'm sorry, you know. So.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Thank you for offering that information. And finally, want to speak to Joel. Joel, there's a lot of information, you know, when we're talking about announcements and things changing on a daily and hourly basis. Some days, you are one that really has to keep up as a chartered professional accountant. So first of all, tell us a little bit about Lipschitz and what your business does for folks in this community.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. So we are a full-service chartered professional accounting firm. We are also licensed public accountants, which means that we can do just about anything in terms of the accounting, financial statement, tax field. We do not do public companies. However, we do focus small and medium-sized businesses as well as individuals. So we do a lot of small companies that are both in Georgina and outside of Georgina. We have clients all across Canada, believe it or not.
Wow.
Even have one in Australia at the moment. But
really?
Yeah, interesting.
Really? So yes, so a local business who's worldwide providing your services. Amazing.
Well, I could say that, but I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. Well, I can't say that I'm global, but I know the circumstance.
Then it's okay.
Yeah, but it's interesting that, you know, some of the things that Margaret and Lee have both said, because what we see is we see how everything comes together. And that's really the basis of accounting, because if you look at any government system, any monetary system, any financial system, it all comes back to accountants needing to put everything together. It doesn't matter if it was communism, capitalism, someone had to report to somebody to say what was really happening. And that's a big part of what we do. Of course, government regulation is another big part. So not only do we do a lot of work in the income tax field, we also get involved in other things like workers' compensation and on and on and on. So when Margaret talks about the markets fluctuating, that has an impact on a lot of our clients, which has an impact on some of the services that we may provide for them. It has to do with maybe financing through banks or other means, as well as you know, just how to run their business and how to deal with certain employee issues or customer issues. So what we do really is affected by everything, and we're really a center point of how it all comes together.
Right. When it comes to this, during this time, though, there have been so many announcements, and the government has announced some relief programs, which is great for businesses, but
right.
They certainly have to know how to navigate their way through these programs, and you're there to provide some assistance and to educate them on how to best navigate, correct?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I give kudos to the current government for trying to get programs out there, trying to get money out there as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, they haven't always thought it through. So they leave a lot of people out, or they don't provide enough information for some people to make decisions on whether they're actually even eligible. Yeah. So we get a lot of questions as to how to interpret some of the rules. The difficult part is, of course, there's no history to rely on. So I can't say, well, here's the way they've interpreted it. I can only say, here's how I read and here's what I think. In some cases, I research it by going to government sources directly. But as you're right, it's in a changing environment. And kudos to the government for listening to people and making changes. I just wish they could be a little bit more, what's the right word, in the first place, making sure that they really do get it as right as they can.
Well, and we've certainly seen that as we send out information to our members, and I know you've seen it. You have something that's released, and as it's released and as it unfolds, suddenly the eligibility changes a little bit because somebody has fallen through the cracks, or there wasn't, the income level was a certain amount, and we're falling through those cracks. So this is a great way for. They're learning as they go, but so are we.
But you know what, Jennifer, I think you brought up a valid point, which is that as the Chamber of Commerce, you've been trying to stay on top of things, and thank you for keeping me on your list of emails. And I've also tried to keep my clients informed at the same time. And you've done a very good job of doing that, I think, for the members, and I kudos to you. But saying that, a lot of times the original announcements are so broad that nobody really knows what they actually mean. I get inundated with calls from people saying, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? How does it affect me? And it's hard to answer them since the rules aren't even released at that time. So, and I'm sure you've experienced the same thing.
Yes, and it's almost like a waiting game too, that this is what it's like, but we need you to just wait because it may change a little bit, it may alter. One of those things, the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, and I just brought in a couple of examples because I know that is a subsidy that originally started, I think it was 4 terms, of 4 different times. It has now been extended into later in the year, 75%, up to 75% wage subsidy for businesses. But it's considered taxable income.
That is correct. It's government assistance, which is taxable, generally speaking. So yeah, the eligibility has now been extended for up to 24 weeks, which would be six periods.
Right.
In order to qualify, that's one of the issues that have changed from the original announcement and onward. So, for the first period, which was March 15th to April 11th, you had to have a revenue reduction of 15%. For the subsequent periods, it changes to 30%. But the interesting part is if you qualify for one period, with respect to the revenue reduction, you can also qualify automatically for the next period. And the thinking here is that as businesses experience revenue losses, as they start to gear back up, it shouldn't be an all or nothing thing. So that, in effect, it gives them an extra month to get ramped back up and to bring their people back and still get the benefit of that subsidy.
Right. And I think at one point during each of my conversations with each of you, my eyebrows started touching because I get that furrow where you start to talk. But that's exactly why being able to have your businesses, your services to be able to ask these questions is so helpful, because it's just so convoluted for people to understand and to keep up with those changes.
Well, I think you're right. I think part of what we do, it's the same thing that Margaret was referring to, which is we provide people with stability in terms of their thought process to give them reassurance so that they do know that, they have a course that they can follow with some confidence. So they call us up, we'll explain the rules, we'll talk about their particular situation, how it applies to them, and we will do calculations for them. So I can't tell you how many clients we actually did the 75% emergency wage subsidy application for, but there's a number of them, and they were so happy to let us do it, and we were happy to do it for them. It wasn't. It wasn't a situation where we charged a lot to do it. We just basically charged for our time. But, also keep in mind, there's also, for the first 3 months anyways, there's the 10% temporary wage subsidy, which helped businesses with their employment and employee remittances to CRA. And I'd like to remind people to make sure they took advantage of that if they qualified. For that, there was no revenue reduction required. It was other criteria. So I would encourage people to make sure they took advantage of that if they're able to.
Joel, what can businesses do now to prepare for next tax season, to prepare for what they need to have, or is there anything different that they need to be doing to prepare for an audit, prepare for tax season next year?
The general thinking is that CRA is going to ramp up their audits for a lot of reasons. One reason is with access to these programs, the emergency wage subsidy, the business emergency bank account, the SERB, they are going to be doing a lot of audits, and they're going to put a lot of resources into that for, I guess, a few reasons. One reason is they're going to need money. The deficit's jumping, what I think was $300 billion or plus or minus a few billion. And it has to come. The money has to come from somewhere. So, thinking is CRA is going to be looking for money. The second reason, of course, is a lot of these programs are really on the honesty, honorable. How would you say an honesty system?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
like SERB. I mean, like you applied for it and you got it. I know there are people who got it who were not entitled to it. And unfortunately, a lot of those people are the most vulnerable. And there's going to be an impact when CRA comes to them and said, you don't qualify, you need to give that money back. I have no idea how some of these people will ever pay that money back. Right. And I think that's one of the collateral damages that's going to happen. But back to your question, I think it's important to remember, nothing ever stays the same, right? Nothing lasts forever. The good times, bad times, and so forth. So I think what you always have to do is prepare by being as healthy as you can be, whether it's your personal health or your financial health.
You couldn't have ended the show any better. You just summed that up, and that's a perfect way to end the show. Thank you, Joel, for being here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Lee and Margaret, for being here as well. I loved doing the show because the information is so valuable for residents in our community to understand certainly all of the changes that are being made and to be able to navigate. Thank you so much for watching on behalf of Rogers TV Georgina and the Chamber of Commerce. And we'll see you next time on My Business.
Thank you.